Ready? All right, good morning. Welcome to the special call meeting of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. I'm Rob Pitts. I chair the Board of Commissioners. Today is April 1, 2022. It is approximately 10:02 a.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll of the Board of Commissioners.
Chairman Rob Pitt.
Present.
Vice Chairman Liz Hausman.
Present.
Commissioner Bob Ellis.
Present.
Commissioner Lee Morris.
Present.
Commissioner Natalie Hall. Commissioner Marvin Arrington Jr. Commissioner Khadijah Abdul Rahman. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And we'll check in with the mayors. Present, please.
City of Alpharetta, Mel Gilvin.
Present.
City of Atlanta, Mayor Dickens. Chattahoochee Hills, Mayor Reed.
Present.
College Park, Mayor Motley Broom.
Present.
East Point, Mayor Holiday Ingram.
Here.
Fairburn, Mayor Avery. Hatefield, Mayor Hallman. Johns Creek, Mayor Bradbury.
Here.
Milton, Mayor Jameson.
Here.
Mountain Park, Mayor Steele. Palmetto, Mayor Bodie.
Here.
Roswell, Mayor Wilson. Sandy Springs, Mayor Paul.
Present.
South Fulton, Mayor Khalid. Union City, Mayor Williams.
I'm here.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. The agenda is before you. We'll proceed with the agenda as it's printed, but if we have time, I'd like to add one item, and that item D would be a discussion on a follow-up to a summit that was held yesterday regarding crime among young people, and specifically in the Fulton County school system. We had a very it was the first meeting, was attended by school superintendent. The school superintendent and I co-hosted this summit. Mayor Williams was in attendance. Mayor Gilvin was in attendance, as well as Mayor Avery. And there were some items that were brought up that I think merits the attention of all of the mayors in the county. So if there are no objections, and time permitting, we'll add item number D, which will be a follow-up to the meeting from yesterday. I hear no objections. We will proceed accordingly. Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir. Good morning, commissioners and mayors. I think we've got a good agenda today. 3 subjects: COVID response and emergency rental assistance, an update on the loss process, and then a new subject, which is tax allocation district, and a process that we introduced to our board that we want to cover with each of you for upcoming TADs. Just a couple of upfront comments on COVID. What you're going to hear are that, of course, that the trends are good and improving. When you have increases or decreases, I guess I should say, of over 600% in some cases, while it's too early to declare victory, it's certainly, we're pleased to see that. We're also closely watching this new variant BA2, but there are no projection changes right now in the models that we're using, as you'll hear. Vaccines are, of course, still the key. We have had 81 deaths, unfortunately, since our last meeting, and 92% of those, 75, came from the unvaccinated. As you can imagine, we're planning for a transition as the demand for testing and vaccines still continue to decline along with these trends. So look for, again, more emphasis on mobile, continued messaging. We're still providing $100 incentives for first and second shots, but we're also planning for less labor intensive efforts like kiosk delivered tests. We're going to trial those in the next month or so, as well as, and we met with the state yesterday on this, wastewater testing for potential evidence of COVID. So all of these obviously will remove some of the labor intensity around our efforts, but still keep a good monitoring process in place. You'll hear from Dr. Rochelle today about a brief update on emergency rental assistance. Again, I'd remind you that we now have received both of the additional $25 million allotments that we requested. So that puts us in total above 90 million that we'll be distributing through this program. And again, one of the most successful ones in the country. We'll also briefly touch on other efforts that we're doing to support our communities as we come out of the pandemic. And I'm going to ask Samir Abdulali to talk about our small business loan program, as well as answer any other questions that you may have. I just visited our site at 4700 North Point this week, where we have an extensive inventory of PPE. So as we think about transitioning, we still have ample inventory to support your efforts and our efforts as it relates to that, if there is any resurgence that requires that level of protection. And of course, we'll be moving that inventory to our new central location in Union City as it comes online in the October-November timeframe. So, Mr. Chairman, we're going to speak to, again, each one of these three items today, starting with this first one. I may make a couple of comments about Lost and Tad as we get there. But for the first one, Doug Schuster from EMSI is going to lead our discussion. And then Dr. Rochelle, Matt Kallmeyer is out today attending a family event recognizing his father's passing. So keep Matt in your thoughts and prayers. So Doug, if I could ask you to step through the charts on the COVID response, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning, mayors, commissioners. Like the county manager alluded to, the 7-day average for cases, hospitalizations, and deaths have all continued to drop since the last mayor's meeting. I do want to remember that since the last mayor's meeting, though, 81 people have died from COVID. 75 of those were unvaccinated. Current modeling has the Fulton County forecast metrics to be close to our current levels all the way through June 2022. Those models will get updated at least on a monthly, maybe at worst monthly, but maybe sooner, depending on what we find out about the prevalence of BA2. The BA2 variant now accounts for about 39% of all new cases in the state, and 60% is still the Omicron variant. We'll show you a chart that will describe this a little better. Planning activities for the next wave, testing, surveillance, after action reporting, getting ready so that we're better prepared for the future, taking all the lessons that we've learned will be our focus as we transition from kind of pandemic to an endemic response. Next slide. I always like to compare from the last time we met. You can see in all three places, the county, state, United States, much lighter colors. And that's pretty much the trend nationwide. Next slide. This looks at kind of case prevalence per municipality. It's always good to share this. Just remember the case numbers are so low, it doesn't take a lot to make an arrow swing one way or another at this time. But pretty interesting that most everything's going down at this time and going down slower as we're getting close to the trough of the wave. Next slide. Also kind of tell you where we've been. Our 7-day average for cases is down 618% since the last time we met. 7-day average for percent positives is down 349%. Hospitalizations down 300%. All these metrics have slowed considerably in the last week or so, but we do meet monthly, so pretty significant changes there. Next slide. This is the risk level matrix that is put out by the CDC. Just so you know, if you look at the top of this slide, cases per 100,000 needs to be below 200 to be in the green. Hospital admissions per 100,000 needs to be under 10. We're at 3.1. and percent of staffed inpatients bed occupied by COVID patients needs to be under 10, and we're at 2.4. I will say, as we get further into the pandemic, this hospital metric will become very important as at-home testing becomes more prevalent. Some of the case numbers will be harder or not as accurate as they have been in the past. So understanding what's going on in the hospitals, we also are tracking percent positivity and new cases in the hospital. So all this information will make us better prepared. Next slide. Before I get into the variant slide, those of you that happen to watch the daily sit reps that come out, for the last 2 days, we've had significantly high case numbers. I just want to have everybody rest assured that it has nothing to do with the new variant, BA2. It is a backlog of cases from a particular lab in the state of Georgia that went unreported in the months of December, January, and February. And so they're going to spend about a week getting caught up. So we'll have artificially high numbers in case rates for about a week, but none of this has anything to do with the BA2 variant. As you all well may know, that BA2 is showing significant infectious rates in Europe and some places in the Far East. We're monitoring that closely and will continue to do so. As you see on this slide, this is the latest from the CDC. The pink color that you see is the BA2 variant. It's now the dominant variant in the United States, but in the Southeastern and in Georgia, it's only about 40% of the new cases. So we will continue. I will say that in New York, in the northeastern part of the country, you see BA2 is very dominant, and they have not shown significant increases in caseload or hospitalizations, which is encouraging for the rest of the United States, but we'll continue to monitor this. Next slide. Just talk about going forward. Before we move forward, I'd like to talk a little bit about what we've accomplished. Over 550,000 vaccines administered by the alliance between the Board of Health and Fulton County, $14 million invested in PPE and all kinds of other protective equipment, 600,000 tests administered, 174,000 at-home COVID tests procured for distribution. We've opened 5 county DOH-led fixed locations for vaccines. And we've had 872 mobile vaccine events at 256 unique locations. And we've had hundreds of partnerships, most notably with schools, churches, volunteer organizations, and other local businesses. Next slide. At this time, not only here in Fulton County, but across the nation, we're starting to think what our response posture looks like. And so we will continue to monitor and prepare for a variety of near and long-term scenarios, ensure we have the resources to quickly respond, adjust our response and recovery and preparedness strategies based on science and data. The plan will include a whole community approach like we always had, as our partnership has made our Fulton County response one of the best in the nation. Next slide. And literally, the first quarter, which came to an end yesterday, is a response phase. And what we were doing was 6 mobile vaccination units, 4 fixed sites, and 3 Board of Health vaccination clinics. As far as the transition phase for Q2, we're going to 3 mobile units, 2 days a week at our fixed sites, and gather lessons learned and start working on improving plans, training, and exercises for the future, which takes us, through the rest of the year and beyond. And our goal is to be nimble and be able to respond to the data as we get it. Next slide. That's all I got. I don't know if Dr. Paxton made it online, but she should be here for questions too.
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Is there anything you'd like to add, Dr. Paxton?
No, I think this is very comprehensive. I'm just going to make a couple of quick comments. I just want to once again, as we've always been doing, emphasize the importance of, if you haven't gotten your booster, to go ahead and get that now, because that's so incredibly important. The second thing is just to give you a heads up that I've been invited to participate on a panel at the White House in mid-April. So I'll have to miss one of the Board of Commissioners meetings. And it's specifically to talk about early warning systems for the next health threat that's going to come our way. So I think it's also kind of a bit of an acknowledgement of how well Fulton has done, that they kind of reached down to us to give some practical local health experience with health threats. So just giving you a heads up about that. And again, I'm here for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Paxton. Mayor Kamau?
Thanks. I have two questions. First, Dr. Paxton, congratulations on being invited to Washington. I think that's the providence of this county commission of selecting to head this effort. We spoke about this a few weeks ago at our council meeting, but I am hearing now about a possible second booster, fourth shot that the Biden administration is rolling out. I know previously the evidence seemed to suggest that might not be that change now.
Yeah, well, I'd be happy to go into more of that. It has just recently been approved that for those people by the FDA and CDC is going along, is that for people who are over the age of 50, who would like to have a second booster shot, that is allowed as long as it's at least 4 months after their previous booster. Now, I think that there's going to be, and I'll be honest about this, I think that there was a lot of controversy about this. We do know that vaccine effectiveness does wane a bit, as does any immunity from a natural infection too. We know that it wanes over a couple of months. So I'll tell you sort of what my thinking is on this. If you are indeed somebody who is aged, of course, and I'll say anything older than me is considered aged. And particularly if you are immunocompromised, then you should be talking to your physician about getting, that second booster now. However, here's what I'm doing is that, because I don't have any of those particular, comorbidities, I'm really worried about what's going to happen when we get into our normal cold and flu season, which starts, like around September, October. I think it's going to be very important that at that point we have our population as protected as possible. So I can tell you that we at the Board of Health are going to be making a big push to remind people to get vaccinated, particularly around that time. So here's what I'm telling people now. I'm saying if you haven't had your first booster, absolutely go out, don't waste any more time, get that today. If you are immunocompromised or you're older, like particularly if you're over 65 or whatever, I would strongly consider that you go ahead and consider getting that second booster. In addition, I should mention this, if you are immunocompromised, you should also be talking to your doctor about getting Evusheld, which is a medication that can help protect people who are immunocompromised. So I think that's another side thought. And then for everybody else who's sort of on the fence, you are allowed to get that. If you want to get a second booster, if it's going to make you feel better, and if you're going to be traveling or whatever like that, you might want to consider doing it. But I really want to make sure that around the time that we go into our normal cold and flu season, that is when I really want everybody to be maximally protected. So I haven't gotten my second booster yet. I'm going to hold off a little bit on it. I'm looking at the numbers. We will tell you all about the numbers too. And, my recommendation might change next month if we start seeing, cases really rise up at the moment. But in the moment we're in this hiatus, I think we're kind of enjoying it. And so those are my personal thoughts on this. I'm not speaking for the CDC or anybody else. I was just speaking for myself.
All right, thank you. And my second and last question, while on the subject of our elders, is for the commission. Has there been any thought, or I might have missed it, I'm sorry if you issued this statement before, but opening the senior centers, is there any plan or timeline for that?
I believe they're open. I think Dr. Rochelle is
They're open and have been open.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Other questions? Any other questions? All right, Mr. Manager.
I'd like to ask Dr. Rochelle, and Dr. Rochelle, you can speak to the senior centers in more detail as well, but if you would give us an update on the emergency rental assistance program.
Good morning. So first I'll start with the emergency rental assistance update. As the county manager indicated, we have now received our second reallocation of $25 million for a total of $50 million in reallocated dollars, bringing the total of emergency rental assistance funding in Fulton County to $96 million. On the screen, you should see the 25 million reallocation. This simply shows how much of the first 25 million we have distributed to date. We have, since the middle of January, served over 1,400 households and have distributed 10.6 million of the first 25 million. And so we are continuing to accept applications, and we encourage you to encourage your constituents to continue applying. The second category is additional funding request. What this is the opportunity for households who have previously received assistance through this program to reapply. Unfortunately, many families have not gotten back on their feet. They still need support. And with this additional funding, we are able to fund additional requests. To date, we have funded 495 households at an investment of $3.9 million in additional requests. So you may hear from constituents that say, I still need support. I've already applied for emergency rental assistance. Can I apply again? And the answer is yes. And we are now accepting not only applications for first-time assistance, but for additional funding requests. The third category is our SAFE program. This is our partnership with Magistrate Court. We have staff on site to mediate between the landlord and the tenant on site. And what this involves is a rapid application process and payment to landlords so that we can avert the evictions. We have assisted 474 households and invested $4.1 million in this effort. We are continuing to provide this on-site assistance with the SAFE program, and Chief Judge Cassandra Kirk and her team have been outstanding partners. I do invite you to visit our transparency page if you would like greater detail on the performance of our emergency rental assistance program. As it relates to senior services, all of our neighborhood senior centers and our four multipurpose facilities are fully operational. We are providing services on site, our classes and our meal services, as well as our adult day program. We are fully opened and operational. However, some seniors are not comfortable coming to the facility, and so we are still offering a virtual programming component, and we are still performing wellness checks. In addition to that, we are still providing over 1,000 seniors with emergency meals. We, throughout this process of our community response, have been keenly focused on ensuring that seniors not only are engaged as we can with our virtual programming, but we have been providing meals to, as I said, over 1,000 seniors per month with our emergency meal program. So Dick, that concludes the update on emergency rental assistance and the update on where we are with senior services. Are there any questions?
Yes, Dr. Rochelle.
Commissioner Morris. Commissioner Morris, followed by Commissioner Abdul Rahman.
No, I have no questions.
Okay, Commissioner Abdul Rahman? I thought y'all said.
He did.
Dr. Rochelle, first of all, let me thank you and your office. You have been very, very responsive to the cases that have needed special attention, and the constituents that have reached out to me that I've had to send over. And so first and foremost, I want to thank you for your attentiveness with that. I still do have a few constituents. I'm not sure if it's something that is lacking on their end or if there's some miscommunication, because I think they fall into that group of individuals that are seeking help again. They're not quite back on their feet. And so I'm trying to find out, and I know each individual case can be different. And so I don't want to go into that point. But what I want to ask you is, what are you all doing to let the individuals that may not know that the second they can apply again if needed? Is that on the website? Are we actively letting the constituents of Fulton County know? Because I've had to let some people know through my office that if you're still eligible, you can still apply. So I think there's some miscommunication a little bit, and it may be on their end. I'm not exactly sure, but I just wanted to basically bring it to your attention. Great work that you're doing, outstanding. I know we've had some special cases that you've had to deal with, but fortunately you were able to get the funding for them. But the only ones that I do have a little concern about are the ones that are applying again. And I don't know if they're being turned away. I don't know if there's some additional thing that they may should be presenting or not. But that's the only concern that I have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So where the communication gap may be is that we've just recently started to fund those additional requests in the last, I would say, 4 weeks, because we were prioritizing the resources for first-time assistance. But now that we have this additional $50 million, we definitely are in a position to fund those additional requests. And the communication plan is to reach out to all constituents that were previously funded. We do have their email communication or their email contact to let them know that additional funding is available. So that is the plan. And we can also provide to you, the mayors and any other commissioners, some clear communication about how to go about making that additional request.
Thank you, Dr. Rochelle. Okay, that explains it. I think what may have happened, they may have come in at the time that you all were prioritizing the first ones, and they may realize between now and the time that you have started to do the second ones that it's available. So I'll make sure I get that information out in my weekly newsletter as well, that they can apply if they are still qualified for it, that the funding is available for those, because that's the bulk of the ones that I'm getting, is that they have applied and they were told that there was more funding. So I think you are correct. I think that communication, and I will do everything in my office to make sure that that gets out as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Arrington?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Rochelle, you know my question is about the mortgage assistance and where are we with that? Certainly, I'm glad that we've been helping those with the rental assistance, but how do we prevent homeowners from being put in the position that they might get evicted because their home gets foreclosed on?
So Commissioner Arrington, I am in continuous conversations with Superior Court about how we can mitigate the foreclosure and lien, specifically the lien process, when it comes to specifically HOA dues that are in arrears and how we can work together with Superior Court. So when I have some additional information from Superior Court about how we can work specifically to address the lien from HOAs and mitigating that and working to direct those constituents to the mortgage assistance that's being provided by the state, which does cover delinquent or past due HOA fees. I'll continue to keep you updated.
All right, thank you, because these people's houses are getting foreclosed on every day.
Yes, sir.
Other questions or comments regarding rental assistance or mortgage assistance? None. All right, continue, Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir. The next subject is lost, and our county attorney is going to lead us through that. Just a couple of comments. We've established dates as you requested in the last meeting, with the first one being a request for us all to name our teams by mid next month. In the interim, Sue, Sharon Whitmore, our CFO, and I have been working together with our consultant, Doug Eves, who did do this work for the county about 10 years ago to develop a common set of facts on population, service delivery expenditures and the like, and we will deliver that report no later than the end of June. Then Sue will cover with you a schedule that lays out 2 mayor meetings, 7 negotiating team meetings over a 60-day period, all facilitated by Zoom just for expediency's sake. We appreciate not only the spirit of cooperation, but your own personal leadership during this process. It certainly would be helpful if you establish, any boundary conditions or principles as we move along. But again, we enter this again with the notion that we will, again, spirit of cooperation, get this done. So I'm going to ask Sue to go through the details and give you any perspective additionally that she has on how this process will work.
Thank you, Dick. At this point, we are trying to lay out a schedule that we can all work with. Last time we met, Mayor Motley Broom suggested that we map out some dates since everyone is busy so that we can reserve those on our calendars. So we have attempted to map out a schedule that will hopefully work for everyone. By May 16th, we are asking that the cities contact our clerk to the Board of Commissioners, identifying your negotiating teams and providing contact information so that we can have a contact list. By the end of June, as Dick mentioned, we will be distributing our consultants report to the municipalities and also need to send a notice to the State Revenue Commissioner, alerting him that we have commenced renegotiations and call the renegotiation. As for our meeting schedule, we scheduled the first of the meetings for mid-July, July 15th, to give everyone time to kind of review and digest anything that's presented in the consultant's report, and also to avoid the July 4th holiday week when we may have some people who have conflicts. We will begin meeting every Friday starting July 15th through August 26th, with the exception of August 4th, which is a Thursday because we have a mayor's meeting on that Friday. Those meetings will be from 10 a.m. to noon, and we are anticipating that they will be via Zoom. Finally, by Monday, August the 29th, our mediation period will begin if we have not been able to come to an agreement on our own, and that will continue through December the 30th, which is our last opportunity to submit a lost distribution certificate to the State Revenue Commissioner.
Question.
All right, any questions? Comments, questions? All right, thank you. Continue, Mr. Manager.
Yes, so the next subject is tax allocation districts. What we have done and wanted to share with you is thought through a more standardized process for your submittals and then for our board's approval for county participation. You'll see as we go through this, there's been an extraordinary amount invested in TADS, close to $350 million since 1999. So it's not an insignificant undertaking or decision when that's made. And there's been huge benefits, I think, from TADS as well. What you'll see, I think, is a pretty straightforward approach with 3 tiers: the Georgia statutory requirements, county requirements, and then what I would call specific public benefits like transit or affordable housing that might be included. So as we emerge from this, we know that there are and have been some discussions with both City of South Fulton, Alpharetta, and then I also believe Union City. There may be others of you that are have this on your radar screen. So again, I think it's a good, from a timing standpoint, to get this established, both approved by our board, which they did in their last meeting, and then to you for purposes of your planning. So Samir is going to lead us through this. I've also asked Samir to just tag on to the very back of this, a brief discussion of the small business loan program, which has been quite successful. We're infusing another 3.9 million into that program. And hopefully you can take advantage of that with your communication to your small business owners as well as we're doing. So Samir, if you'll lead us through this TAD policy.
Sure, thanks, Dick. And good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Samir Abdullahi. I'm the Deputy Director for Select Fulton. Select Fulton is the economic and workforce development arm here for Fulton County government. And I'm very pleased to provide and present this new TAD review process. Again, I think what you will see is in the benefit of this is really adding clarity to not only the process that we'll make our decision-making through, but gives you clarity of a point of contact and essentially a timeline that you can plan around. What you'll expect to see during this presentation, I know we have some new mayors on the call. Not all cities have participated in TAD, so I did want to just quickly review what TADs are. I'll highlight briefly what our current participation in TADs are, and then lastly go over the actual policy and process. So what you see on this slide, TADs are tax allocation districts. They are redevelopment tools created by the state legislature. They do fund eligible public and private redevelopment efforts. And what's unique about TADs is those funding efforts are concentrated within a designated area. So if you're creating a TAD, essentially what you're doing is taking the incremental taxes after that TAD is established and using those funds to concentrate both on public and private redevelopment efforts in order, again, to spur new development and to create new investment in that area. So it's really that slice, that triangle you see there in orange that remains to fund the TAD. Those are funds that do not go back to the local jurisdiction. The hope is after those funds are invested inside of the TAD, at the TAD expires, you've now got your existing base, but now this additional increment that both the local jurisdictions, the county, the city, and the school systems can benefit. So they are focused redevelopment tools. As you can see, they are up to 25 years, so they are significant commitment of funds to a targeted area. Next slide, please. Just giving a sense of the current landscape here in Fulton County and our participation in TADs. Right now, the county participates in 15 different TADs. You can see that on the map there on the right, most of which are located inside of the city of Atlanta. The county's contributed $346 million of funds since 1999 across all of those TADs. On average, we account for about 49% of all TAD funds. Again, there's a three-legged stool when it comes to TAD funding. It's the local city jurisdiction, the county, and the school system that can all potentially participate. Based on those 15 existing TADs, 5.8% of the Fulton County land is inside of a tax allocation district. And Commissioner Ellis asked a great question when we presented this to our board. What is the percent of assessed value? So what is the taxable value inside Fulton County that's actually inside of a TAD? That's 13%. So 5.8% of the land area, 13% of all taxable property inside of Fulton County. When we look at kind of the need for the review process, as the county manager alluded to, we've got several cities either recently have adopted a new TAD or are seeking the county's participation in newly proposed TADs. Just 2 of the 4 that we're aware of would increase the amount of county land inside of a TAD up to 7.8%. The state does have a rule that cities are not allowed to exceed 10% of their land area inside of a TAD. I think the question is out as to whether a county is, but I think we would be looking for that as a similar metric that we would not want to exceed. As we review the 15 TADs we currently participate in, you'll see a variety of different participation, both from the school system side of things, representation from Fulton County, either on the Urban Redevelopment Authority actually making the decision of which projects to fund, or some type of TAD advisory board that makes recommendations. And then lastly, really on the reporting side of things, now that the county is contributing its funds, what is that return on investment? How are the TADs proceeding? There's a mixed bag of whether we're getting reports on these different 15 TADs we're participating in. And then lastly, one of our main partners, Fulton County Schools, which would serve everything outside of the city of Atlanta, they've just recently developed a new TAD evaluation process. I'd say ours is slightly different in that it's a review process, and I'll highlight those differences here on the next slide. So that's really what's kicked off why we put this policy together. Next slide, please. So as the county manager, back one, thank you. As the county manager alluded to, we have developed a 3-tiered approach, again, 3 lenses that we would, I wouldn't use the term evaluate, that we will review your tax allocation district and the plan backed by the urban redevelopment plan. Those 3 tiers, the first is the Georgia statutory requirements. Again, these are the basic elements required by the state in order to establish a TAD, looking at both the feasibility of it. So can the bond payments actually be financed? Again, the debt service actually be financed by the incremental growth in the area? What is the anticipated economic growth? So what are those benefits we'll see from an economic standpoint? What are those clearly defined boundaries? So what is the impact area that we're defining? Shifting over to the second tier in the general county, kind of the county's role. Again, we're trying to get a clear sense of what role the county will have and what input the county can have when participating in TADs. As I alluded to, that can be in the form of some type of government, either in advisory boards or sitting on the redevelopment authority making those decisions. Understanding the term that you would want the county to commit to, up to 25 years is really the threshold. Types of reporting that would be offered either annually or quarterly, maybe in the form of coming back to the Board of Commissioners and reporting on the success of that TAD. Again, keeping things focused to the TAD area and where those benefits would accrue, not necessarily including broad brush areas as we describe them as halo effect areas. And then having an understanding as to whether the school system will participate. As I mentioned before, right now, the current TADs we participate in, we're shouldering about 49% of that funding. So when the school system decides they don't want to participate, that puts an additional funding commitment both on the county and the city's side. And then lastly, looking at TAD specific, really unique to the TAD, recognizing that TADs oriented in communities, and the communities are quite diverse here in Fulton County. While there's not at the state level requirement around public benefits, again, we're reserving local county dollars for significant periods of times. We want to see and try to understand if there's beyond the economic benefits, public benefits that would accrue, since again, those won't be funds that we could deploy. And that could be in a diverse things, whether it's affordable housing, transit, arts and culture. We mentioned things like broadband. So anything that you could touch on that is in your TAD plan that speaks to the public benefits. So those are the kind of the core elements that the county would review and then communicate to the Board of Commissioners what the TAD plan is. As you step down to the review process, our office in Select Fulton would really serve as that point of contact, interfacing with either your city administrator, community development professionals, or economic development professionals, whoever's really driving that TAD forward, to again, pull out all these 3 elements and work with an internal review committee really made up of institutional professionals inside of the county to develop a simple summary report that we would provide and present to the Board of Commissioners. Again, I think the major benefit in this is not only you've got a committed point of contact, but a clear timeline as to when that would be presented to the Board of Commissioners. As we know, timing with presenting both to the tax assessor and Department of Revenue participation in TAD is important. So lastly, I've gone over this several times, but I do think the main benefit in establishing this policy, not only to our city partners, is again, you've got that point of contact, a clear timeline so that you can plan for things. And then you understand clearly what the important elements for Fulton County are in terms of our review. And then additionally, internally, our Board of Commissioners will have more clarity and can make a more informed decision of how they participate in TADs going forward. Before I answer questions on TAD, I do want to just quickly make a plug on our small business loan program that the county manager mentioned. On the next slide here, please. This is the second of our small business loan programs really addressing the COVID-19 response. This one is called our Fulton County Recovery Loan Program. As you mentioned, we're deploying $3.9 million to benefit over 70 small businesses. Applications will open Monday, April 4th. We have sent most of these marketing materials to either you directly or your economic development professional that we work with. Your small businesses can go to aceloans.org/Fulton to apply. Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs, or ACE Loans, is the provider we worked with previously under CARES Act funds to deploy $3 million, serve 90 businesses, both in a diversity of geographies and industries. So a great partner. We're looking to replicate that success. The loans will be substantial. They will range from $50,000 to $100,000, really focus around declines in revenue to address the pandemic. Eligibility will be Fulton County businesses, just like last time, outside of the city of Atlanta. We have prioritized, based on Treasury guidance, minority and female businesses, as well as what we're defining as high impacted COVID industries, such as performing arts, food service, film, music, and education. So it's not a prerequisite that you have to be a minority female business or in one of these industries, but we are going to prioritize them based on Treasury guidance. I think what is a great new feature that we're adding to this is not just loans, but providing technical and counseling assistance in kind of these different tracks below, both financial management, marketing strategies, and the like. So we didn't want to just empower them with funding, but make sure that these companies can be sustainable through a little hand-holding, technical assistance, and counseling. So again, please promote aceloans.org/Fulton to your small businesses, just as we have done. And Mr. County Manager, that ends my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, commissioners, mayors, are there questions?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Mayor Bradbury.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. You have the floor.
How are you doing, Mr. Chairman?
Fine, sir. Thank you.
Good to see you. You know, I think that we were all raised that we should neither do anything for or against people based on their race or their gender. And I'm just wondering, you are probably more familiar with the Treasury guidance. What is the justification for COVID relief and special loans being made prioritized based on gender or race?
Sure. Thank you for that question, Mayor. Again, the Treasury guidance is really defining as those who may not be the official term, unserved or underserved. And this is really the lesson learned from the first tranche of federal funds that went out during the CARES Act, where it was very reactionary, funds out the door with not focus on priority populations. This second round of federal funds, so under the American Rescue Plan Act, a lot more guidance around disparate groups or underserved groups. I think we saw a lot of that with funds like the PPP program, the Payment Protection Program, where again, a lot of unbanked or unserved individuals that trended minority and female businesses were not able to secure funding through these federal programs. And I think that was part of the program design here. Both at the Fed level and I think aligned with our commissioners, is to make sure some of these underserved groups, while it's not completely for them, it does add some prioritization to take care of them.
And, you know, I know that you are in the position of following behind what the Treasury dictates, but I would like to think that in Fulton County that we would try to, obviously we want to educate and publicize to any groups that maybe did not know about or were not as equally able to take advantage of it. But I would like to think in terms of who would qualify for the actual program, that the law would be blind to race or gender, but maybe that's maybe I'm being a little bit of an anachronism saying that. But anyway, I just wanted to pass that on.
An exclusion.
Mayor Kamal.
Thank you so much. These are loans, so I'm wondering, when are they paid back, and what is the terms under which they are paid back? And that question would also go for the PPP loans. I've heard that something has triggered them being paid back now, so I just want to understand that process.
No, thank you for your question, Mayor. And if you go to aceloans.org/Fulton, we have kind of all the requirements there, both the terms and the supporting materials needed to be submitted. Right now, the loans are 48 months with interest rates ranging from 3 to 4%. They'll be slightly below what we would expect to see out in the marketplace. Again, part of why we went with access to capital for entrepreneurs, they are a local CDFI, community development financial institution. So they work with underserved individuals. We've had tremendous success with them previously. Part of the challenge when you do these kind of recovery loan programs is you expect 10 to 20% of the individuals actually to not pay back the loans. We did not have that instance, and that's part of the reason why we designed a loan program. Grants are one-time offerings. With loans, we're able to build a little sustainability in the program. So again, the idea was $50,000 to $100,000. We want not super significant, but a significant amount of funding to alleviate any hole they had on the revenue side of things, complement it with training so they can make sure they pay back the loans, and we may be able to reoffer those back out.
So I think it's great that we are providing these loans to people who have been under-resourced or traditionally have had access and capital. The PPP loans, do you know, and I'm sorry, this is a bit of a tangent, but I have heard that it's time for those to start being paid back now. Could you talk about that, and what are the penalties for late payments? Does the interest rate jump up, or the fine? Like, what if people haven't paid back those loans, are delinquent on those loans? Does that affect their ability to get this new round of funding?
No, so we will not, on your second part, we would not exclude anyone who received previous federal funding from participating in a program like that, or like this. I'll have to follow up with you around the PPP guidance. My understanding is they're sending a lot of language around the forgiveness piece. And educating small business owners. It can be a little dicey and similar with the upcoming tax season of how to account for those funds, but it doesn't necessarily count as income. So I think there's just a lot. And as you've seen with a lot of these programs, the guidance is kind of being written on the road. And so I think they're learning on the fly to try to educate the small businesses that did take advantage of the PPP. That's a great question. And I'd follow up with you directly on what that guidance is looking like.
Thank you so much.
Ingram.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for sharing the information. Thank you to the county for taking measures or taking proactive steps to infuse equity within this program. I'm not surprised, given President Biden's not only his statements on commitment to equity, but I serve on a federal agency committee, and equity is being infused all throughout everything that is being done at the federal level, because we know equality hasn't existed in this country, state or county or cities, and that there's a need to make sure that as these resources are becoming available, that they're being used to dismantle systemic inequities and structural and institutional racism that have existed. So again, I want to commend the county on making sure to lift up those areas where there have been inequities and opportunities to dismantle that through this program. And as long as I'm a mayor and a part of these meetings, that will be definitely something that I will be continuing to advocate for and expect as we try to move forward in a county where we've become more collaborative and more sense of working together, but understanding that equity is a must and that we have to do things differently to dismantle those. And so definitely wanted to raise that comment, and again, thank the county for including that level of infusing equity to address some disparities as we move forward with funding programs like this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Other questions or comments? Anyone else? All right, thank you. Anything else from you, Mr. Manager?
No, sir. I think that concludes the printed agenda.
Okay, we added without objection a brief update on the summit on youth violence, in particular in our schools yesterday. That summit was held here at the Government Center. It was convened by Fulton County School Superintendent Looney. It was an organizational planning meeting that was well attended. And as I mentioned, two mayors, actually three mayors were in attendance: Mayor Williams, Mayor Gilvin, and Mayor Avery. And Mayor Gilvin and Mayor Williams, would you like to, we talked about bringing this to the attention of the other mayors who will be with us today. So with Mayor Williams, Mayor Gilvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to say thank you to you and the superintendent for convening this opportunity around the Fulton County Youth and School Safety Summit. You know, we, as a working group together on yesterday, had a number of organizations there to support this initiative. We all know that we're experiencing a heightened element of unsafe activity in our school systems. And certainly we want to make sure we can do the best we can to make sure that we protect our most valuable resource, and that is our children. We had an opportunity to identify 3 areas on yesterday with that working group to address immediately, and that is the increase of improved communications between school police and city police jurisdictions, as well as youth mentoring and advocacy programs. I did mention at the meeting that we need to make sure, you know, that we include in those advocacy programs, include the element of faith-based organizations. You know, a number of us remember faith-based was a part of our educational process. And certainly we have organizations such as the Concerned Black Clergy, as well as the South Fulton Ministerial Alliance that serves South Fulton, but would be welcomed in the North Fulton area as well. You know, there are some concerns around North and South, and we got to look at how do we make that balanced, you know, as it relates to funding resources. Some areas have a little bit more of a challenge, and we need to make sure that we address those things. And one of the other elements that we came up with that we needed to address immediately was multi-agency communication tools and monthly meetings. So I thought it was a great conversation on yesterday, and certainly would suggest to all of my colleagues, if you are not there, but most of you had your police chiefs were there, so you had representation. So I'm sure you'll be hearing more about that. But this is a great opportunity for us all to dive in as a community, a one Fulton community, to make sure that our schools are safe, our children are safe, and even their walks to the bus stops and walks from home from school are safe as well. But I'll turn it over to Mayor Gilvin or Avery. But thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me this time to share.
Mayor Gilvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to thank you again for coordinating that event yesterday. I thought it was a great event, and Dr. Looney as well. It was impressive to see the resources y'all brought to bear to address this issue and to bring it to all of our attention. I appreciate the fact that I get to follow Mayor Williams again, because there's literally, he does such a great job of explaining the issues. And to his credit, it was Mayor Williams that proposed better engagement of the faith-based communities around the county. And that's something I fully support. He made a lot of great points. And I think the one thing overarching that I took away from this was that while there certainly are a diverse number of communities, and it was evident yesterday. I mean, we have tremendous different issues throughout the county, but we all have issues regardless of the community. And there may have only been a handful of the mayors there, but there were, from my viewpoint, I think every city in the county was represented in one way or fashion by police or elected officials or something of that sort. And I think that's a powerful statement on how serious we take this, regardless of what the independent issues within the communities are. All of them are important. Our schools are the foundations of each city in this county, and it's always important to support the youth and the challenges they're facing. There were certainly some heartbreaking issues brought to our attention in some of the areas and things like that. But I will mention something that I'll never forget about yesterday is that, you know, a lot of people think of the differences between North and South Fulton and the differences within those communities. But I happened to be sitting by Dr. Looney, and about an hour and a half into this meeting, at one point, he leaned over and showed me the phone, his cell phone, and the text that he had received. And at that point, there were two notifications, safety notifications that he had received about potential threats within Fulton County schools. Both of those threat notifications were high schools that serve Alpharetta. And it just reiterated and kind of ingrained in my mind is, regardless of the issues I'm hearing about from some of these other communities, none of us can take this for granted. The safety of our schools and our students is a top priority. And so we all need to be engaged in this. And I think it was great to be able to come out of a meeting like that with not just hot air, but actual actionable items. And I look forward to following through with the commission and with the school board in the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Motley Broom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would have loved to have been at this meeting, but received notice of it the Friday before. And if we are looking for participation from all of our mayors, for those of us, and I believe that is a majority of us, this is a part-time position and we have to schedule around a number of other things. And so I would just ask in the future, as we continue these conversations, that we get a little bit more advanced notice, because 1 week just really isn't enough. As I asked for the lost negotiation dates as far ahead as possible, and I appreciate the county's accommodating that. I've blocked it off on my calendar and look forward to these conversations. If we want additional participation, I think a week is a little short notice.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor Holiday Ingram, what's the next meeting? June.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have a question before I make my statements. What were the actionable items that came out of the summit? I echo Mayor Motley Broom's comments. It was actually less than a week notice about the summit. And so I too had a conflict, but what were the actionable items that came out of it?
Mayor Williams?
Yeah, there were a number of actionable items. The three that were identified on yesterday were those that I just shared. And that is the communication between the police school system, as well as police in the local jurisdictions, but also communication between all of the law enforcement agencies, as well as with the school systems, and also dealing with wraparound services. And it was great that the Department of Health and Human Services was there, DFACS was there, a number of elements, and certainly we can make sure that you get all of the information that was shared with us on yesterday. But again, each of the mayors that I can remember, especially on the South Side, you had representation there. So I do know, and certainly I had to bounce some things to try to be there because I got the notice when I got it, as you did as well. So I said, okay, let me try to see what I can do, and kind of it worked out for me. And I do understand your concern around earlier notification, but one of the good things that we did identify yesterday was coming up with a June meeting, and they will be sending information out to see what date works best in June for everyone. So I think that certainly addresses the issue around notification.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. And so as a person who worked as a director of student discipline in Fulton County Schools for 6 years and dealt with a number of these issues, you know, there is a place for law enforcement and policing, but a hyper focus on law enforcement, policing, militarizing our schools is not going to be the silver bullet or the panacea. And I do understand, and it's good that there was a conversation around wraparound supports. There's also a need for commitment from the district in resources, financial resources, and human resources into making things, to addressing root causes. And so, you know, I read something recently and they talked about hiring more police officers, but the ones that were hired were only placed in South Fulton schools while there was a stabbing at Centennial and North Fulton. And so, you know, as we look at these approaches, I'm cautioning, you know, us in South County, this over militarizing and really focusing on police and law enforcement within our schools. Our schools are not prisons, they're places of learning.
About what? I'm sorry.
Our schools are not prisons, they're places of learning. And so, yes, when anyone commits a crime, there should be a law enforcement response. And there are kids in schools that absolutely should be suspended and expelled. I did that for 6 years. But once you start focusing in this way, what ends up happening is a lot of kids who are not committing those types of offenses get caught up within that whole, let's just have this strict compliance approach. So I'm glad to know that there was some level of discussion around other root cause matters. When I was at the district, there was a faith-based summit held annually. And so prior superintendents have looked at ways to connect with the faith-based community. I share action plans around how houses of worship could participate. I think there's time for this leadership and the board to, and it's good to, like, they are doing some things, it's a start, but we're really gonna have to dig in deep and commit real resources, financial and human resources, to really work together to address and make sure that, yes, our schools are safe, but our kids are learning, and that all kids, regardless of decisions that they make, are still being supported when you know, nobody's human, imperfect, nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. As adults, we continue to make them, and that there are appropriate consequences for the types of behaviors that are being committed. But also, let's not make sure that we're doing these broad sweeping things that's going to really, again, I think disproportionately impact communities of color when you start militarizing and focusing on, you know, increasing and intensifying law enforcement as if that is one of the primary solutions. It is a part of it, but a lot of it goes to the real root causes and needs and that our kids have and that they're facing, and the challenges of the times that we're living in. What are we going to do to put resources to that and commitments to that? And so I look forward to receiving a date for the conversation in June. I mean, something this important definitely deserves a lot, ample notice. I made sure my city manager and police chief were there on yesterday, but you know, when I think of schools, I don't automatically think of policing.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Mayor Kamau.
Hi, thank you so much. As a new mayor of a 100 square mile city, I feel like I'm drinking water from a fire hose. So thank you so much, Mayor Broom and Mayor Ingram. I got the notification. I just couldn't make it work. I really, really wanted to be there. But thank you so much also, Mayor Williams, for putting together this June date. I think it's important for us not only preparing for next school year, but also thinking about the summer, which is, at least in my city, I'm sure several other cities, is we see spikes in crime and juvenile related activities that aren't the most positive, because we just need more for our young people to do. I will definitely be at the June meeting, but until that time, I would ask that just please pass on this thought, which is that there are a lot of but at least in my area, I'm sure again, probably in other areas, there are a lot of young people that are doing community work. They're founding organizations and nonprofits. And while they may not have all of the structure and the paperwork in place, they are the closest to the young people. A lot of them, I know quite a few people who are graduates of South Fulton schools that are doing, that want to do this work. And I hope that we can find a way for them to partner with more established organizations and maybe use the established organization structure, but use these new leaders' proximity to young people to really reach them in new and creative ways. But thank you so much, and I look forward to that June meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Wilson?
Good to meet you. Commissioner, thank you, sir. And Mayor Ingraham, I apologize for having the mic on there earlier a few minutes ago and stepping on your conversation. So my apologies to you, ma'am.
No problem. It happens to all of us in this virtual space.
We got a lot going on over here. And that's kind of echoing Mayor Broom's comments. I've got the city administrator, Randy Knight, with me in here, and our city attorney, David Davidson. And my understanding also is that our police chief, Jim Conroy, for some reason, I don't think it's the first time this year, unfortunately, it may be, I may apologize. We were not at the meeting. We were not represented at the meeting. And to the best of our knowledge, we were all ignorant of the meeting. That's not a great thing to say, but for some reason, I don't know, we're not always, I guess, hitting the communication loop. Want to see if we can rectify that. And obviously something on our end that needs to be remedied. We're more than receptive to doing that, but obviously need some help. And we would love to have been a part of the meeting. And obviously disappointed we couldn't be there, but just wanted to say, we to the best of our knowledge, we didn't even know the meeting occurred. So that's all I've got, Commissioner. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Gilvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel bad that so many of my fellow mayors weren't able to attend. Fortunately, I did just happen to have an opening. That's not typical for something on a short notice. So if I could take just a minute to try to relay some of the things that I heard that they want to know about. I think that Fulton Government TV was recording, so it may be available at some point for the mayors if they want to go back and review some of that. But I just want to cover a couple of points that really stuck out. I jotted down some notes just as the other mayors were speaking, especially in reference to Mayor Holiday Ingram's comments about not militarizing and all about police and enforcement and things like that. And I want to assure all of the mayors that this was an integrated event with not just Fulton County School Police, not just the Sheriff's Department of Fulton County, not just the individual cities' police force representatives and things like that, but we had members from the court system. We had members from DFACS. It was holistic. And so the points I remember that really struck me early on in the discussion, just identifying the challenge that we all are facing to one extent or another, was that there's always been a challenge with a certain portion of the school population. And there was an overwhelming sense that most of the kids and most of the families throughout the county are good kids. Some of us make bad mistakes when we're in school, and I'm not immune to making some dumb choices at that point. So I think there was a recognition that we're not talking about a majority of the population throughout the county, but there was a recognition that there are certain young people that are a small percentage of the population that create a large percentage of the challenges, especially the major challenges, the major safety issues. And so there was a lot of discussion about how we can do a better job of supporting those students and also communicating about those. And one of the challenges that was discussed was that, with COVID over the last few years, the inability of students to be in school, to be socializing in person, to have a healthy, structured environment 5 days a week and things like that have created challenges for a lot of the young people throughout the county. And that's as far as socialization. You know, they haven't been around people. They've been glued to their phones, playing games or doing whatever they're doing, and they haven't been around each other. So they're not as comfortable as they may have been after a couple of years of not having those opportunities. And that one of the things they've found is creating a sense of higher violence now is that because they haven't been in school, many of them have been out on the streets during the past couple of years when they should have been trying to do, you know, remote learning if it was available to them and if they had that chance, is that they aren't really resolving conflicts well. And the point was made by several different speakers that conflict resolution seems to be a really bad issue throughout the county where they haven't been around each other that much. And all of a sudden, something that typically when they have been around each other socializing, it escalates from 0 to 60 really quickly. Something that was fairly minor or would to us be considered fairly minor escalates to a really dangerous level where weapons may be involved or things like that. And so that was one of the challenges that we talked about. And as a solution or hopefully a way to do that, as Mayor Williams referred to, is partnering with outside organizations. We discussed better mentoring programs. One of the points that I made myself was that Kwame Johnson, the gentleman that runs the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Fulton County, is a tremendous asset to the community. And they are partnering in some of the schools, I believe, in South County. But I'd love to see that program expanded with support from the school system and hopefully the county throughout the Fulton County schools, because we need mentors in the north side of Fulton County as well. And so it wasn't just about enforcement. There certainly was some. I think one of the asks from Dr. Looney was that maybe we can cooperate better with the school system, police department, and the local communities to start reinforcing the truancy laws. Because based on the professionals in the school system and law enforcement, they were saying that a lot of the issues overlap between people that aren't going to school at all. I think there was a representative from the court system that said many of the violent young offenders that they are dealing with are people who haven't been in school for 2 or 3 years. And these are like middle school, grade schoolers and things like that. And so those are things that with the local communities participating, communicating, and helping to support each other, we may be able to help move the needle on some of that stuff. And just identifying, you know, there historically has not been a tremendous communication network between the Fulton County School Police and the local communities they serve. And Dr. Looney was very intentional about trying to improve that. If there's something that's a high level, they have different levels of threat. If there's a level 3 threat in Alpharetta or Union City, then the Fulton County School Police need to notify the local police so they're aware of it, because these young people live in our communities and we need to be aware if there's ways we can help. So that's probably enough of your time, but I just wanted to share that it wasn't just enforcement, it was a holistic approach of how do all of us work together for the betterment of our schools and our communities.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Avery.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, thank you. The question I want to just ask, and basically, first of all, let me just start. The meeting yesterday was very, very productive. As a former mayor speaking, I was just blown away that 3 students could be truant for 2 or 3 years. I think me and Mayor Williams had that conversation. But the question I wanted to ask kind of centers on what Mayor Ingrid just spoke about. My question to you, Mayor, is that when you talk about the resources that we'll need to bring to, in this case, the school system or as a collaborative group, I just wanted you to name, if you could, specifically what resources are you referring to when you talk about financially? And let me tell you why I'm asking that. Myself and 6 other mayors in South Fulton, I want to say it was in 2012, went to the school board as relates to what we could offer. Then fast forward to about not even a month ago, our city government was actually using part of our money to go to the school board, which I later found out is a violation of the law after I researched it. My question is, I'm trying to be real clear about what is it resource that you're referring to based on your former capacity in the school system and Fulton County government my question is, what resources, being that the limitation that city government has, particularly as it relates to donating financial money? I just wanted clarity on that.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
Oh, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, so let me be clear. When I talked about resources, I wasn't suggesting that those come from the city, because the Fulton County School Board receives property tax dollars to educate all of our kids throughout this county. And Fulton County School Board has a budget of—
what we know is that the Little Bear wastewater treatment plant has capacity.
And Fulton County School Board's budget is almost $1 billion or over $1 billion. So they're not lacking in financial resources. When I talk about resources, again, I did this work to create a positive school climate. Yes, there is this need for, focusing on like making sure there are appropriate consequences for behavior. While I was in the district, we reduced the suspensions overall about double-digit percentages, partnered with the juvenile justice court to make sure that we were reducing referrals of kids for minor infractions to the juvenile court system, because we had kids that were getting trapped in this system of, again, being very tough on behavior and recommending more serious consequences than necessary. And we reduced those referrals as well. And so when I talk about resource commitment, I'm not suggesting that cities should be paying for this. The county receives resources. In our city, we leverage our network resources, influence, and relationships to bring in partners through corporations and other things of that nature. So it's not necessarily coming from the city, but there is a need for full-time social workers within every school, definitely in South Fulton County, that the district hasn't committed and allocated resources to. There's a need for a safety audit at all of our schools. That is not just, talking about how many more police officers we need, but having people literally walk our campuses with experts in the area, like former chiefs of police or former school resource officer chiefs. They're people who have a lot of expertise in this area to do a full comprehensive tactical safety audit of all of our schools so that we can really identify what's necessary to deal with that factor of it. But there are a number of other supports and resources that Fulton County School District has resources to be able to allocate that are needed to really ensure that we have safe learning environments in our schools and that all kids, regardless of the decisions that they make. I was responsible for the hearings that sent kids to alternative schools and made some recommendations to permanently expel kids because some behaviors are just that bad. But even when they were in alternative school, I made sure that there were opportunities there for them to learn from what they had created, the behavior that they had committed. So there was social emotional supports as well as academic support so they could stay on track to be able to graduate. Because at the end of the day, when you talk about having kids in the 10th grade reading on a 3rd grade reading level or below, the system had failed them a long time ago. And so when are we going to be able to really work together around that? So how do we extend learning in out of school time? And in cities, we have park and recreation facilities, or we have a number of organizations that come in. How are we partnering and intentionally aligning the work that is happening in school to what is happening out of school time? And so we have a joint learning committee where we partner with our department heads, the school leaders in our city, faith-based, nonprofit, for-profit organizations, all to extend learning out of school time and increase parent and student engagement. So there are a number of things as cities and municipalities that we can do that are not financial resource commitments. As you indicated, there's challenges with that, but we can leverage our network, relationships, influence, and resources to help partner. But there's an absolute requirement from the district, the school district, and the tax dollars that they receive and the hefty budget that they have to make appropriate allocations. And yes, there is a place for policing and safety, but when we talked about the agencies that were there, and thank you, Mayor, for recapping for those of us who weren't there, but a lot of it was law enforcement. And there is a need for that. Our police officer in the city of East Point work collaboratively with the school resource officers at our schools, have strengthened those relationships. There's a place for that. But we also have to make sure we're building the social infrastructure and the institutions necessary to address the root causes, to connect our children and families to the resources that they need in a restorative way to help them reach their full potential and be responsible and productive citizens. So I wasn't suggesting that the city should be paying or committing resources, but that it is a very complex and comprehensive conversation. And really it takes commitment. It doesn't happen overnight. We didn't get into these situations overnight, but what's required is continuous, sustained commitment, and we keep up the same energy, not just when something happens bad at a school, but every day throughout the year, that we're keeping up the same energy and same commitment, and not just responding when things happen, but that we're being proactive.
Yes, ma'am. And Mr. Chair, can I just respond?
Yes.
One?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and Mayor, again, thank you for that clarification. Part of what made me ask you that is because of, I don't know about the rest of you mayors, I normally try to give our city council a wrap up of meetings like this. And one of the questions that I'm sure I would be asking if I was a council member is, okay, you talked about resources. Give me specifically, what is the plan of action? I know you talk about bringing resources. So my question is centered on what was particular, the avenue, what was the actual application that was going to be used to grant the resources as well as the funding sources. And again, just for clarification, because of what me and six other, I believe it was six of us in 2013 and 2012 went through with the school board, I basically in this case wanted to make sure for clarification purposes, I was very clear of what was intended by when they used the word resources and finances and where they were coming from. So again, I want to just put that clarification so that when I write my brief, overall brief to our city council, I can be accurate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mayor Ingraham, I promise that wasn't me in the background talking about septic stuff. And Mayor Williams, I know you're a believer in Providence. And it's kind of ironic that the meeting that I had before this meeting this morning, I went to a solution that I'm going to suggest, Mr. Chairman, that perhaps if we're fortunate enough to have another Fulton County Youth and School Summit, Safety Summit, that might suggest that there's a solution already happening here in Fulton County, resides in Roswell, where we have where the kids test out at 95% of the national average. The kids come across all economic lines in terms of demographics. They're 30% white, 20% African-American, 40% Asian, an amazing eclectic mix of kids where there's been zero incidences of violence since the school's been incorporated, K through 8, right here in Roswell, the FAST school, the FAST school. I'd suggest, why not have a summit there? There's a lot of solutions that Fulton County has incorporated through that's having immeasurable success with children across all demographics. And those are the kind of solutions that I think are addressing what we're all after as public servants for our children and for great success in our schools. And it's amazing that right here in Roswell, Fulton County had the wisdom to to allow one of those schools to happen. And the amazing success of that school is incredible. And if you go in there and meet the children and the parents, the energy is palpable and contagious. And that's what we want in our schools for all our children. And this is a great example where creativity is allowed to take off and the results are magnificent for the children, and they're going to be magnificent results for our society. So just a suggestion that maybe we go to a place where there's success, where Fulton County has planted the seed of success, and we all can take some lessons from it and learn from it.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. Other comments, questions? Anything else? Okay, commissioners, mayors, it's approximately
Mr. Chairman,
Madam Mayor.
This is not in relation to the conversation regarding our schools, but I did have a question regarding how things were going in terms of recruitment of poll workers.
All right, I was going to close out on elections very quickly. Thank you for that. We are on track with respect to polling locations. We're on track with respect to poll workers. In fact, we've had several recruiting events primarily up north, I think, that have been very successful. We still need more, but we are on track. We do, though, when I say we, the Board of Registration and Elections, they've had a little setback, which you probably heard about. They had decided upon a replacement. By the way, yesterday was Mr. Barron's last day. But in the meantime, the Board of Registration and Elections, through their search firm, had decided upon a candidate who was an exceptional candidate. At the 11th hour, that candidate withdrew his name from consideration, which means then that the Board of Registration and Elections is back to square one. They'll have to go back out into the marketplace and to find someone else. In the meantime, they had also chosen an interim director, Ms. Nadine Williams, who will be continuing in that role until such time as a permanent person can be identified. Now, I've been asked I have no inside information as to why the gentleman who was chosen at the last minute decided that he did not want to come here. But I do have some personal thoughts on why that was the case. But that's an update to your question. On target with respect to polling locations, on target with respect to poll workers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A friend of mine is a county employee in another state and has received the entire office has received a call for county employees to actually work the polls on election day. They do not have to use a leave day, and they are paid as a poll worker. Just thought I'd put that out there as I don't know if it's something that the county would consider, but I thought it was a novel approach. For those who live within the county, they don't have to use leave, and so they get their regular daily pay and are able to work the polls that day. And so it may help to fill the gap.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Kamau? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you so much. I was just unmuting myself. First, sorry, I'm sorry that happened. Should we assume, at least for the May 24th election coming up, that Ms. Nadine will be the director of elections for that election?
Given and again, I can't speak for the BRE, but given the time that it takes to recruit someone, and that you're also assuming there's someone out there who is capable, first of all, and second of all, interested, that's probably a good assumption that she would be the person in place for the May 24th general primary.
Yeah, I just, you all know how important messaging is. So I think just for the sake of stability or whatever, it might be good to assure voters that we have a person, they are in place, and that everything is fine. Are we on track to begin early voting? Will we have that 3 weeks of early voting starting, I guess, May 2nd? And are we on track to get the vote by mail ballot out?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions or comments at this time? Anything else? If not, thank everyone for their participation today and look forward to our next meeting. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.